The first time I saw my own face on a crime report, it was beneath the word deceased. I dropped the cup of tea I was holding. Porcelain shattered. The sound didn't echo. It hung there, heavy, like the world itself had forgotten how to breathe. It wasn't just a look-alike. It was me. Same wrinkles. Same faded green sweater. Even the same brooch I'd inherited from my mother. The headline read, "Body of missing woman identified in Phoenix." The name below it was Helen Ward. But the photo, the one that filled every news feed that night, was the portrait my granddaughter made of me 6 weeks ago. The AI art she'd said would make me look beautiful, the one I'd almost forgotten existed. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just lost control of my photo. I had lost control of my existence. 2 months earlier, none of this would have made sense. Back then, I was just a retired school teacher with a fondness for lemon tea and crossword puzzles, and Lila, my granddaughter, was the closest thing to sunshine in my quiet house. She'd visit every weekend, teaching me the language of her generation, streaming, filters, AI apps, and everything that made the world move faster than I could. She called it bridging the gap. That afternoon, she was on my couch, hair tied up, face glowing blue from the phone screen. "Grandma," she said, "have you ever tried one of those AI art filters?" I chuckled. "Darling, I barely know how to send a text," she grinned. "Perfect. You'll be my test subject." She lifted her phone, angled the lens toward me and said, "Smile like you used to in those old photo albums." Click. The light flashed, painting my living room in a sterile glow. Seconds later, the screen showed me, or someone like me, smooth skin, regal posture, silver hair polished like moonlight. The woman looked like she belonged in a museum, not in a small Illinois living room. Lila clapped. "See, you're stunning," I laughed. "That's not me, Lila. That's what the machine thinks I should be," she winked. "Well, maybe the machine has better taste." It was harmless. A moment of playfulness until the app froze. For just a flicker, the image duplicated, 2 of me layered on top of each other. Then it blinked away. Lila frowned. "Weird bug." Anyway, it uploaded. Don't worry, she didn't know it. But those words, "don't worry," became the beginning of everything I would later fear. The first poster appeared outside the post office. It was raining again, the kind of drizzle that erases reflections. Remember wiping my glasses, looking up, and seeing myself staring back from the bulletin board. Missing, Helen Ward. My face. My eyes, my faint smile, except the photo looked staged. The lighting, the symmetry, too perfect to be real. I showed it to Lila. She laughed nervously. "Grandma, that's creepy, but maybe it's just one of those AI face matches. You know, people who look alike because of filters." She said it too quickly. Her voice didn't match her words. 3 days later, another poster appeared online, this time in a Facebook group for a missing woman named Maria Jensen. Different name, same face, mine. And then, the stories began multiplying. Hundreds of missing women across the country. Each one had my likeness, reshaped slightly, different clothes, different angles, but the same eyes, my eyes. I started calling news stations, police departments, anyone who would listen. No one did. "Ma'am," an officer told me, "deepfakes are everywhere. Maybe someone's using your image as stock. Happens all the time." But this wasn't stock footage. These were lives, and one by one, those faces started turning up in real police reports. Real bodies. Real deaths. Each time, the face matched mine. Each time. Lila told me to log off and rest. That's when the emails began. From unknown addresses, subject lines like, "You're next." Each message attached a single photo, a woman's corpse under a white sheet, tagged with my AI-generated portrait. I confronted Lila one night, voice trembling. "Where did you upload my photo?" She froze mid-scroll. "What do you mean?" "The app, that portrait generator. What was it called?" She hesitated. I don't remember. It was just one of those trendy ones. Why? Because whoever made it is killing people." She laughed, but her laugh sounded rehearsed. "Grandma, you're scaring me." "No, Lila," I said, staring at her too carefully. I think you knew something. And you didn't tell me. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone. You're being paranoid. I just wanted you to have fun. Fun? I snapped. My face is on a corpse in Arizona. Her eyes glistened. Grandma, please. I didn't mean for any of this. She stopped mid-sentence, realizing what she'd just admitted, and in that silence, I knew the truth. She hadn't found the app. Someone had given it to her. Someone who wanted my face, my likeness, my identity. And suddenly, the portrait that once made me feel beautiful felt like a gravestone. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at my reflection in the window. Two versions of me again. One alive, one already erased. The rain kept falling, and in the distance, faint sirens cut through the night. Someone else's story was ending. Mine was just beginning. It started small, as most nightmares do, a soft wind on a quiet street, a sound you don't notice until it stops. The second time I saw my own face on a missing person poster, it wasn't outside a police station or a courthouse. It was taped to the side of a grocery store freezer. The condensation from the glass had blurred the words, but the eyes were unmistakable, mine, only colder. The name below it read, Margaret Ellis, age 62, last seen leaving a motel. I froze, my hands gripping the handle of a shopping cart like it was the last solid thing in my life. People moved around me, mothers with toddlers, men in suits, cashiers chatting, as if the universe hadn't just quietly rewritten me. I called Lila from the parking lot. She answered mid-laugh. Grandma, what's up? There's another one, I said. Another what? Poster, a missing woman. She has my face again. Silence. Then, that same careful tone she used when she thought I was being emotional. Grandma, we already talked about this. It's the AI filter. It probably reused your photo. Don't overthink it. Overthink? I said softly. Someone out there is vanishing with my face. How much thinking is too much? She sighed. It's digital overlap, okay? Happens all the time. But her voice shook on the last word. That night, I searched online again. This time, I wasn't looking for comfort. I was looking for proof. Dozens of posts appeared. Have you seen this woman? She was last spotted near I-80. Reward for information. Each one showed my likeness, each with a new name, new city, new lie, Helen Ward, Maria Jensen, Margaret Ellis, different stories. Same face. The deeper I searched, the worse it got. Old news articles, missing reports, even a grainy video from a mall camera in Nevada, all showing women who looked exactly like me. And every single post had one thing in common. Uploaded within the last 30 days. 30 days since the portrait. At 2 a.m., an email arrived. No subject, no name, just a link. Against every instinct I had. I clicked it. It led to a local news clip, 22 seconds long. A reporter standing outside a police station, microphone trembling in the wind. Authorities have identified the victim in the Henderson case, she said. Then the photo appeared behind her. My face. I slammed the laptop shut. The sound echoed in the small kitchen, sharp and final, like closing a coffin. When I opened it again, there were 2 new emails waiting, both from different addresses, both with attachments. The first, a still image of me walking down an unfamiliar street. The second, a recording. My voice, except... Not quite. It was saying things I'd never said, talking about meeting a client, leaving town soon, don't call me. The tone was precise. The cadence almost perfect, almost. I replayed it over and over, my pulse drumming in my ears. There was no breath between sentences. No human pause. It was artificial, like listening to a mirror learn how to lie. The next morning, I went to the police. The officer at the front desk barely looked up from his monitor. Ma'am, you're saying someone's pretending to be you online? No, I said firmly. Someone's replacing me. That got a glance. Brief, polite, dismissive. Could be identity theft, he said, typing lazily. You can file a form. I'm not talking about credit cards, I snapped. I'm talking about existence. That made him stop typing. He leaned back, folding his arms. Ma'am, how old are you? I didn't answer, because I knew that question wasn't about numbers, it was about credibility. He handed me a pamphlet. How to protect yourself from online scams. And then he smiled the way people do when they've already decided you're delusional. I walked out without taking it. Back home, the posters had spread. They were on my street now, pinned to lampposts, tucked under windshield wipers. Everywhere I looked, she was there. I was there, looking back, each version of me more lifeless than the last. I called Lila again, this time shaking. She answered after several rings. Grandma, it's late? Did you upload that photo anywhere else? She hesitated. What are you talking about? The app, Lila. The one you used on me. Did you post it? Her voice went quiet. Then she whispered, It wasn't me who found it. My chest tightened. What? It was Ethan, she said, my grandson. He sent it to me, said it was safe, said it was for a class project. I didn't reply. Because for the first time, the puzzle made sense. The overlapping timelines, the repeated images, the reason the posters kept multiplying. Someone had fed my likeness into something much bigger than a silly AI app, and someone close to me had opened the door. That night, as rain tapped the window, I looked at my reflection again, half of me in shadow, half flickering in the soft light. I whispered to the woman in the glass, If they can copy your face, your name, your voice, how do you prove you're not the copy? The reflection didn't answer. It just smiled back, half real, half stolen. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from quiet. It comes from people deciding not to hear you. By the third week, I stopped telling anyone what I was seeing online. It only made me sound unwell. I could feel it in the pauses after I spoke, the way their eyes weighted my age more than my words. Truth is heavy when you're the only one lifting it. Thomas, my son, came over with that tight-lipped kindness you reserve for difficult conversations. He didn't sit, he paced. The house had become a hallway for other people's judgments to pass through. Mom, he said, you're getting worked up by the internet. These posters, these emails, scams prey on seniors. You know that? Look at me, I said. I am telling you my face is being used in crimes. He rubbed his temples like he did when he was 12 and couldn't solve a math problem. You've been tired. You said you're not sleeping. Maybe we should schedule an evaluation, just to be safe. There it was. The word people use when they're too polite to say senile. Safe. Thomas, I said softly, when you were 8, you swore there was a monster in your closet, and I didn't tell you to get evaluated. I opened the closet, he exhaled, a sound halfway between pity and impatience. Mom, this isn't a closet. It's algorithms. Then help me open that door, I said. He kissed my forehead and left with promises to check on things. The promises were light as dust. They didn't settle anywhere. After he left, I stared at my own hands. I used to trust them. I used to trust everything. I turned on the kettle and forgot to pour the water. Leela stopped answering on the first ring. Sometimes she picked up, breathless, swearing she just stepped into class. Other times she texted a heart and a call you later that never arrived. Guilt has a rhythm. Hers tapped like a leaking faucet. Then, without warning, the bank called. Mrs. Ward, this is security. We flagged unusual activity. Did you authorize a 4,180 wire to Clearstream Holdings? No, I said steady. Odd, the woman replied. It passed facial verification on your mobile app. I don't know what snapped first, my patience or the small remaining faith I had in anything with a screen. I don't have the mobile app, I said. My bank login is a notebook and a pen. Ma'am, the device is active now, she said. It's in your name. By afternoon, 2 more transfers had been attempted. The bank froze my account for my protection, which meant I couldn't buy groceries with my own money. I drove to the branch because sometimes the only cure for madness is wood and glass and a real human face. The manager sat me down in a tiny office where every diploma wore a gold frame. He was young and eager to be right. Our logs show a successful biometric match, he said, swiveling a screen toward me. That's you. My likeness filled the display, calm, competent, criminal. I watched my digital twin blink at a camera, tilt her chin just so, then nod. The app's green checkmark bloomed like a bruise. "That's not me," I said. He lifted a brow. "It's your face." "It's an image of my face," I replied. "And images are obedient. They say yes to anyone who feeds them the right command." He smiled the way people smile when they're about to refuse you. "Mrs. Ward, this technology is very secure." "Son," I said gently, "I taught children to read lies written in perfect cursive." "Don't tell me about secure. I left with a pamphlet I didn't take and a reputation I couldn't carry." On the way out, I caught the teller whispering to another, eyes flicking toward me. With enough repetition, rumor starts to look like proof. By dusk, an email arrived from an address I didn't know. Subject line in all caps, "Found you at the ATM." The attachment was a still from a security camera. A woman who could have been me, but wasn't, stood at an ATM in a windbreaker I do not own, withdrawing cash with a practiced ease I have never had. I stared at her posture, at my posture, at the way her shoulders squared into a certainty I didn't feel anymore. Behind her, reflected in the machine's glossy black, a sliver of a face appeared. Young, phone raised. I zoomed in until the pixels broke. It could have been anyone. It could have been my granddaughter. It could have been a stranger wearing my bloodline's cheekbones like a souvenir. I pressed my palm to my chest until the bird in there slowed its beating. The next morning, I went back to the bank with printouts, the posters, the ATM still, the emails. The manager met me at the lobby door, professional compassion pasted across his face. "Mrs. Ward, we're doing our best." "Your best is believing a camera over a woman who can still feel her own pulse." He lowered his voice. "We have guidelines." "Of course you do," I said. "So did every bad decision in history." A woman behind me muttered, "Poor thing," the way people mutter when they want to be kind without being involved. I felt humiliation crawl up the back of my neck like heat. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. I let my own thoughts be the noise. Somewhere between the pharmacy and the stoplight with the flickering bulb, I almost wept. Not because they didn't believe me, but because I could feel myself learning to doubt me too. That's what gaslighting does. It doesn't steal your truth. It hands you a prettier lie and waits for you to prefer it. I called Lila once more. She answered on the 6th ring. "Did you upload anything else?" I asked. "No hello, no cushioning." "Any other photos of me? Any video? Did you connect my image to any other app?" She was quiet long enough to break something. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry." "For what?" "I didn't know, Grandma," she said, and the word cracked. "Ethan said it was for a project. He said it was safe. I just wanted you to have a nice picture." Her breath hitched. "I didn't know." I closed my eyes and saw her the way I had when she was 5. Hair in crooked pigtails, skinned knee, shame too big for her small body. You can be angry and still recognize a child inside the wrong. "Who is Ethan working with?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "He's been different, secretive. He keeps saying he's finally valuable. A word that wears a suit until it turns into handcuffs." After we hung up, I opened my laptop again. I wanted facts, not feelings. Data I could stack like bricks until the wind stopped getting in. I started with the ATM photo. I cross-checked timestamps, nearby stores, pulled up public feeds where I could. I zoomed frame by frame until I found what looked like a gloved hand swapping a card. I took screenshots. I labeled them. I built myself a wall. Another email arrived, different sender, same cadence. "Are you safe? We think your image is being used by a group that launders faces through charity posters. Don't respond if you're in danger." A second email followed. Shorter, sharper, like someone dictating from a moving car. "If you can see this, you're not crazy. Keep everything. Don't delete metadata. No name. Just an initial MI breathed." For the first time in days, the air felt like air again. I went to the kitchen, poured water, didn't drink it, carried it back like a ritual. The screen brightness made my living room look like a stage, and something in me, something tired and motherly and done with being dismissed, decided to address the watcher I suddenly knew existed. "From where are you watching this moment unfold?" I asked aloud to no one, and maybe to everyone, because every view, every share, means this truth is reaching one more soul that needed to hear it. The house absorbed it like prayer. I opened my banking dashboard, frozen, gray, unwelcoming, and clicked through to recent notifications. Buried between security alerts and helpful tips was a redacted receipt. Biometric sign-in approved on a device I did not own. Click, another page, another breadcrumb. A third-party payment platform I barely understood. Bright colors, little emojis beside names. Venmo. I don't use it. I don't know it. But there it was, a public feed I didn't mean to see and a username I recognized anyway. Alila Ward, with a payment from Orion.dev 2 months ago. Memo line. Beta test, identity upload. The words sat there. Plain and obscene. I pressed my thumb to the screen like I could smudge the letters into something less cruel. My hand was steady. My heart was not. I saved the page as a PDF. I took screenshots. I printed them out and watched the ink make evidence out of grief. My kitchen table became a small war room, posters on one side, ATM stills on the other, the memo in the center like a stone dropped in water. Thomas called, but I let it ring. If I heard his voice, I might give in to the comfort of being called unreasonable. It is terrifying how sweet that can sound when you're exhausted. I wrote to the unknown M. I found a payment note. Beta test, identity upload. My grandson's handle sent it. What do I do? The reply came fast, like it had been waiting to exist. Do not confront him yet. Back up everything. Print, photograph your printouts. They wipe devices remotely. Meet me tomorrow. Library, 2 p.m. Who are you? I typed. Someone who believes you. I shut the laptop and sat very still. Belief, from a stranger, can feel like a hand on your back, reminding you your spine is still there. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked at a shadow. Streetlights hummed. The refrigerator clicked. Every ordinary sound testified that I was still in the world, even if the world had started arguing. In the quiet, I realized a terrible mercy. You can be untrusted and still be right. You can be humiliated and still be whole. And when no one lends you their certainty, you must lend it to yourself. I gathered the papers, slid them into an old manila folder, and wrote on the tab with a black marker, Ghosts. I didn't know yet whose they were. Mine, the system's, or the people who had vanished wearing my face. But I knew this much. Whatever haunted me was about to be the thing that saved me, and I knew where to look next. The truth was no longer a whisper. It had become a wall, a thing too big to ignore. It felt like a riddle, half solved, but still dangerous enough to swallow me whole if I looked too long. By the time I saw the text from Michael Reyes, I had already given up on finding the pieces. My nights were spent in the same room where I'd once read my husband's letters, where the sound of my grandchildren's laughter felt like an echo from another life. But Michael had other ideas. I had only known him briefly, years ago when he was a student of mine, a quiet, unassuming kid who had been fascinated by the intersections of technology and law enforcement. Over the years, I'd kept a distance from his growing career, mostly out of stubbornness. But when he'd reached out with an offer of help, I felt a flicker of hope. Michael had been a cyber forensics specialist at the state's Department of Justice. His work was cutting edge, working behind the scenes to trace online fraud and illegal activity. He knew what I didn't, how to navigate through layers of data and dust off the clues left behind by the digital age. I met him in person a few days after I'd received the Venmo payment. He looked exactly the same as when I'd last seen him, only more confident, more worn. His eyes scanned me with a silent understanding, like someone who had been watching from afar, waiting for the moment I finally understood. "I'm sorry you're in this, Clara," he said. "But we'll get through it." I nodded, but I wasn't sure I believed him. Michael had already begun digging. His first lead had been through the email I'd received from the unknown sender, the one urging me to investigate. He'd traced the metadata attached to the email and found something unsettling. The email had originated from a private, untraceable server tied to a company called Visage Dynamics. Visage Dynamics? I asked. What's that? An AI firm. They specialize in deepfake technology. Michael explained, his voice steady as he pulled up files on his laptop. This is where your image came from. Not just your face, they've been collecting likenesses from social media, especially of older people, for years. My stomach churned. My face, my identity, had been collected, harvested, really, by a private corporation. It wasn't a glitch anymore. It was planned. They'd turned my likeness into a commodity, sold it to whoever had the highest bidder. He continued flipping through the files. They've got thousands of stolen identities, faces, voices, anything they can use. They've created a database of vulnerable people, and I'm betting your granddaughter's involvement was not coincidental. Lila, I whispered. Her name tasted bitter. I had trusted her, believed she wanted to help me. But now, all the little things she'd said, the way she avoided my questions, they had a different flavor. Michael pulled up more files. This is what I found in their hidden logs. He showed me screenshots of stolen data, hundreds of names, faces, and personal details. I saw my own name in the list, nestled between Margaret Ellis and Helen Ward. But it wasn't just me. It was dozens of others, faces I didn't recognize, all cataloged, all vulnerable, all without their consent. There's more, Michael said. The app you used, Clara, isn't just a harmless photo generator. It's a front. It's a tool designed to harvest people's likenesses for later use, and it's tied to a larger project they call Motherboard. The words hit me like a brick. Motherboard? I echoed. What is that? A high-level AI program, Michael said, his voice lowering. It's designed to perfect deepfake technology. But the real goal is much darker. It's about controlling identities. They can make someone disappear with a click of a button, just like they did with you. I felt a cold knot settle in my chest. This was bigger than I could have ever imagined. My face had become a product, sold in the shadows of this twisted AI operation. Michael leaned back. And here's the kicker. Lila wasn't the one who got you involved in this, Clara. She was just a pawn in someone else's game. I swallowed hard. The thought felt like a slap, but I couldn't ignore it. The pieces fit together now. It was Ethan, Lila's brother. He had convinced her to use the app, to upload my photo, to help me. But his involvement had been far from innocent. He had sold my likeness to Visage Dynamics. He'd opened the door to the digital underworld that had been consuming me. I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. Ethan, why would he? I don't know yet, but I'll find out, Michael cut in. What I do know is this. The entire operation is much bigger than just you. It's a mafia of data theft, and they've been using people's images like currency. The weight of those words hung over me. A mafia, using my face for God knows what. And it wasn't just me they'd been after. They had done this to dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of people. The truth started sinking in, cold and slow. This wasn't about money. It wasn't even about data. This was about control. 2 days later, I confronted Lila. It was late, the kind of time when the world outside feels like it's still waiting to catch up with you. I'd asked her to come over. Her voice crackled on the phone when she picked up, like she was trying to sound normal. Grandma, I'm really busy right now. Can it wait? No, I said firmly. I need you to come over. Right now. When she arrived, she looked nervous. Her eyes were red, as though she had been crying, but she still smiled that fake smile I'd seen 100 times. It was a mask, and I could see through it now. I found out everything, Lila, I said. I know what you and Ethan did, she froze. What are you talking about? You uploaded my photo, and I know you didn't do it on your own. My voice hardened. Ethan was the one behind this. He sold my image, didn't he? Her eyes darted to the floor. She didn't answer. But I didn't need an answer. The silence was proof enough. Why, Lila? I asked softly. Why did you do this to me? Why did you let them take my face? I didn't know, Grandma, she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't know it would go this far. I stared at her, heart breaking. But you let it happen. You opened the door. You were a part of it. She burst into tears. I thought it was harmless. Ethan said it was just for a project, that it was for some art thing. I never thought what? I demanded. That you'd be the one to destroy our family? That I'd end up here, a stranger in my own life? Lila's sobs were loud now, raw, like she was finally understanding the weight of what she'd done. But there was no comfort I could offer her. Not anymore. I'm sorry, she cried. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I shook my head, my throat tight. But you did know, Lila. You just didn't care. She stood, wiping her face. I can't fix this. I can't undo it. And just like that, she was gone. She left without saying another word, her footsteps disappearing into the distance. I stood alone in the silence that followed, feeling the coldness of what had just happened settle into my bones. The house felt emptier, the walls closing in. But then, as if the universe had decided to remind me that I wasn't alone in this fight, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. You're not looking in the right place. M. The words sat there, cryptic, but I didn't need an explanation. I opened my laptop, and within minutes, a new clue appeared on the screen. Ryan's involvement. Ryan, the man who had been Ethan's business contact. He was the one who had taken the data, the one who had turned my face into a commodity, the man who had set this whole nightmare in motion, and soon I would have the evidence to expose him. The truth doesn't come to you in a flood. It slithers. It twists. It pulls you deeper into its own darkness until it feels like there's no air left to breathe. But once it surfaces, you can't look away. That's when the past starts bleeding into the present, and everything you thought you knew shifts beneath your feet. The sound of Michael's voice crackled through the phone. Steady but urgent. I've traced the code. Clara, Ryan's fingerprints are all over this. I didn't need to ask for clarification. The name alone made my skin prickle with dread. Ryan, Lila's brother, my grandson. The one who had been so distant, so aloof in his silence. The one who'd always hung on the fringes, watching but never really being there. And now, the one who had turned our lives into a twisted nightmare. Michael continued, his voice low but sharp. I've tracked his digital footprint through the stolen datasets. Lines of code, timestamps. He's been feeding this to Synthex Media for months, possibly longer. It's a coordinated effort, and it's not just the deepfake app. Ryan's been manipulating the system. He's linked to the mafia behind all of this, Clara. I held the phone tight in my hand, the cold truth sinking into me. My God, I whispered. How far does this go? Farther than you think, Michael replied grimly. I've found evidence of crypto wallets and servers linked to organized crime syndicates. This isn't just data theft. It's a full-blown criminal operation. Later that evening, Lila showed up. Her hair was tangled, eyes swollen from crying. She didn't knock. She simply walked in like she always used to before everything changed. She stood in the doorway, hands nervously fidgeting in her lap. Grandma, she said, voice shaky. I don't know how to fix this. I never wanted to hurt you. I met her eyes, those same bright, eager eyes, the ones I had trusted without question for years. The warmth that had once made her my anchor was now tinged with guilt. Lila, I stopped myself. I didn't have the words to describe the mix of pain and betrayal swirling inside me. How could she have been part of something so monstrous? But then I remembered something. The last time we spoke, Lila had said it was Ethan who had introduced her to the app. But even more than that, it was the way she had said it. There had been no hesitation, no guilt, just obedience. The thought struck me with the force of a slap. Ethan. He had planted the seed in her head. He had convinced her to test my photo. It hadn't been her decision at all. It was all part of his plan to use her as a pawn in a much larger game. I looked at Lila, feeling the weight of my realization settle between us. Lila, you didn't know. You were manipulated, just like I was. Her face crumpled, and she fell into my arms, sobbing. Grandma, I didn't know. I thought I was helping. Ethan said it was harmless, that it was just for a school project, a test. I squeezed her tightly, trying to hold on to the woman I had loved, the one who had sat on my couch, teaching me the ropes of a world I no longer understood. I know, darling, I know, but we need to stop Ethan. He's the one behind all of this. The next morning, Michael's call came through. I've traced Ryan's crypto wallets. He's been funneling the money through shell accounts, but it's all connected to mafia-linked server farms. We have a chance to shut it down. I didn't hesitate. Where do we go from here? We need to get to his old workspace. He has evidence drives stored there, Clara. Everything you need is in that room. I looked at Lila, who had been standing by the window, staring out at the rain. Her hands were trembling as she glanced at me. "I'll help you, Grandma," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "You don't need to apologize," I said softly. "We need to put an end to this. We need to stop Ryan before he ruins more lives." It was late afternoon when we arrived at Ryan's old apartment. It was a small, sterile place, the kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. I had never stepped inside before. Ryan had always been a shadow in the family, quiet and withdrawn. Now it felt like stepping into a crime scene, one I had unknowingly walked into. Lila hesitated at the door. "He's not going to like this, Grandma." I didn't answer. I simply nodded and pushed the door open. Inside it was exactly as I expected. The apartment was cold, minimalistic, all sleek furniture and tech. The kind of space that looked like a showroom for who you could become if you threw away your soul and your warmth. Lila led the way to his bedroom, the only room that felt lived in. There, tucked under the floorboards, was a stash of external hard drives. I picked up one of them, my hand steady despite the chaos flooding my chest. "This is it," I whispered, barely breathing. The evidence, the smoking gun that could expose Ryan's network of crime. But before we could leave, the door swung open. Ryan stood there, his face twisted in rage, eyes wide with disbelief. He stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You can't do this," he shouted, his voice breaking. "You have no idea what you're up against, Grandma." I didn't flinch. "I don't care what you think, Ryan. It's over. You're not going to get away with this." Before I could take another step, he lunged at me, knocking the hard drive from my hand and sending it crashing to the floor. The plastic cracked on impact, spilling its contents onto the carpet. In that moment, I felt the weight of everything we had lost. But there was something in me that refused to break. I straightened, eyes cold. "You think breaking my computer will stop this?" I said, voice low. "It's already too late." Ryan's face turned pale, and I saw the fear flicker across his eyes. He didn't know what I knew yet. "Don't do this, Grandma," he begged. "You don't know what you're messing with." I pulled my phone from my pocket, tapping the screen with calm precision. "I don't need to know what I'm messing with. I've already uploaded everything to Michael." Ryan's face went white. No, you didn't," he stammered. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, a soft, inevitable crescendo. Ryan turned to flee, but it was too late. The door slammed open as the police swarmed in, guns raised, uniforms sharp against the pale light. He didn't resist. I looked at Lila, her face streaked with tears. "We did it," she whispered, and for the first time I believed it. The moment you realize you're not fighting alone anymore, something shifts. You stop feeling like the last person standing and start seeing yourself as part of a greater truth, one that can no longer be ignored. It was that shift, that understanding, that fueled the FBI's raid on Visage Dynamics. They came in at dawn, tactical boots silent against the sleek cold floors of the AI firm's headquarters. Within minutes, the world would know what they had done. The truth would no longer be buried in the shadows. 2 days before the raid, I received a call from Michael. His voice was tight, full of purpose. "We've got them, Clara," he said. "The FBI's moving in on Visage Dynamics. They've been tracking the servers for weeks now. We've confirmed the data, all of it. 12,000 faces, all cloned, many of them elderly women." My stomach turned. 12,000 faces like mine, twisted into someone else's story. Someone else's nightmare. I closed my eyes for a moment. "And Ryan?" "Arrested," Michael confirmed. "And the corporate heads are going down with him." "This is bigger than we thought, Clara. These people were running a global fraud ring. They've been selling access to biometric data, cloning identities for years." I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. "What happens now?" "The investigation's gone public. The media's already all over it. It's going to explode," Michael said, his tone unwavering. "We're moving fast. They'll be arrested by the end of the day." By the time the FBI's agents stormed Visage Dynamics headquarters, I was sitting in the quiet of my living room, watching the news in a trance. Lila sat beside me, her eyes wide, reflecting the chaos unfolding on the television screen. "Do you understand what's happening?" I asked her. She nodded, still unable to speak, as the images of FBI agents carrying boxes of evidence flooded every news station. The story had broken wide open. The AI fraud ring, a complex web of stolen identities, data exploitation, and deep fakes, had crumbled in the light of truth. And with it, the reality of how deeply Ryan and Visage Dynamics had infiltrated lives like ours. As the hours passed, the press conference began. The image of the FBI spokesperson appeared on screen, outlining the scope of the arrests. But the most shocking moment came when they released the names of the people involved, and the photographs of the thousands of victims. Among them, my face appeared. Not just as a casualty, but as the face that had unmasked the whole operation. I turned away from the screen, the tears burning behind my eyes. Not for the pain, not for the loss, but because this was what I had always feared, that my name would be dragged into something far bigger than me. But then came the headline that caught the attention of everyone who had doubted me. Every skeptic who had dismissed me as just another vulnerable woman lost in the digital age. The words flashed across the screen. Grandmother's face unmasks global AI fraud ring. The title of the article didn't surprise me, but the flood of messages that followed, that was the true shock. People began reaching out to me from all corners of the world. Women who had been tricked, stolen from, and silenced for too long were finally finding their voices. And they were using mine. The press conference was set for the following morning, and I knew what I had to do. The thought made my hands shake as I got ready. Lila had dressed me in something simple, a quiet, dignified outfit that spoke volumes without needing to shout. We arrived at the media room. The buzz of cameras and reporters swirled around me, but I remained calm, breathing slowly as I adjusted my blouse. I hadn't asked for this. I hadn't sought it. But now that the truth had found its way into the world, there was no going back. As I stood at the podium, the chaos of the room seemed to fade. I stared at the flashing lights, the faces all demanding a piece of me, and I felt the weight of everything I had endured. The first question came from a journalist who couldn't seem to resist asking, "How does it feel to be the face of this investigation?" I smiled, the answer ready on my lips. "I'm not the face of this," I replied calmly. "I'm just the one who didn't back down." Another reporter asked, "How did it feel when you realized your identity had been stolen?" I held up a hand, the words steady. "It wasn't my identity that was stolen. It was everyone's. This wasn't just about me. It was about every person who's had their face used, their voice copied, their life erased. My face was just the key that unlocked the truth." The room fell silent for a moment as the weight of my words settled. And in that silence, I felt the power of the truth growing. It was no longer just my fight. It was the world's. The world that was slowly waking up to the dangers of this new digital era. Then came the final question. "Do you think you'll ever forgive Ryan for what he's done?" The question hit harder than I expected. I paused, looking out at the crowd before speaking. "Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a decision," I said quietly. "And right now, I'm not making that decision. Not until the full extent of the damage is understood. But one thing I do know, they copied my face, but they couldn't copy my conscience." The cameras flashed, the room murmured, and for the first time, I felt something close to peace. Not for myself, but for the countless women whose names had been erased, for the ones whose faces had been stolen without a choice. Back home, the letters began to arrive. Handwritten letters from strangers, women who had been silenced by the digital machine. They wrote of their pain, their struggles, their own stolen faces. Each envelope felt like a heartbeat, like a promise that I was no longer alone in this. And as the days went by, the case continued to unfold. The story didn't stop with me. It spread, igniting conversations about digital identity theft, privacy, and the sinister forces lurking behind AI technology. And while the world began to change, one thing remained true. The lies were finally exposed. The faces had names again, but for me, the victory didn't feel like an end. It was just another chapter. The truth may have fought back, but the fight for dignity would never truly stop. The storm had passed. The sound of sirens had faded, the headlines had shifted, and the world was moving on. But for me, The real healing had just begun. It was a cool evening when Thomas called. I'd been waiting for this moment for so long, but when the phone finally rang, my hand trembled as I picked it up. "Mom," he said, his voice hoarse. I don't know how to say this, but I'm sorry for everything." I sat in the quiet of the living room, the place that had once been filled with chaos and the sound of accusations. But now there was only silence, a silence I was beginning to find peace in. "You don't need to apologize," I said, my voice soft. "But I need you to understand why this hurt. It wasn't just about me, Thomas. It was about everything we were as a family. You didn't see it, but it was there, right in front of us." There was a long pause before he spoke again. "I didn't know, Mom. I didn't know what she was doing. But I should have seen it. I should have seen her for what she really was." I closed my eyes, breathing in the weight of the moment. "It's not about her anymore. It's about us, Thomas. It's about you and me, rebuilding what we had." He let out a shaky breath. "I've been going to therapy, Mom, trying to figure out why I let things go so far. Why I let myself believe her." "Good," I said. "It's never too late, Thomas." The next evening, we sat down to dinner. It was simple: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, a salad. But it felt like a luxury. There was no grand celebration, no fireworks, just the quiet sound of silverware on plates and the faint hum of the air conditioning. Lila, who had been away from the house for days, walked in with a smile that felt real this time. Her eyes met mine, and we both knew this was the beginning of something new. We ate in silence at first, each of us lost in our thoughts. But then Lila broke the quiet with a soft sigh. "Grandma," she began, looking at me with new, open eyes, "I've decided to study cybersecurity. I want to help protect people like you, people who don't know how easy it is for their lives to be taken apart by technology." I raised an eyebrow, surprised but proud. "I never thought I'd hear that from you, Lila." She smiled, her eyes glistening with a spark I hadn't seen in her in a long time. "I've been looking into it. There's so much more to it than I thought. I want to help fix this mess, make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." A soft warmth filled the room, and I knew this was the first step in mending what had been broken. There was hope here, hope that wasn't just rooted in forgiveness, but in growth, in change. The following week, I received a series of letters. They were handwritten, most of them on plain paper, scrawled with messy handwriting. But they all carried the same message. "You saved me, Ellen." They were from women, mostly older, who had read my story and felt their own lives reflected in it. They too had been victims of technology, of ageism, of manipulation. They had been ghosted by the world, erased by a generation that no longer valued them. One letter, in particular, stuck with me. It was from a woman named Margaret, who had lost her husband years ago and had been struggling with the same isolation I'd felt before everything happened. "I was never brave enough to speak out," she wrote. "But after hearing your story, I realized I don't have to be invisible anymore. I'm fighting back now, in my own small way." I sat back in my chair, holding the letter in my hands. Tears welled in my eyes, not from sadness, but from gratitude. These women, they were now a part of my fight, and I had them to thank for reminding me of my own strength. A few months later, I was asked to give an interview. The request had come from a news outlet that had been following the AI ethics debate sparked by my case. I agreed, not because I wanted more attention, but because I knew that the fight wasn't over. The battle for digital identity was only just beginning, and I had the chance to shape the conversation. The interview was conducted in a quiet studio, with cameras set up just right and a reporter sitting across from me. I could feel the weight of the moment, the importance of speaking out on behalf of those who had been erased, exploited, and forgotten by the digital world. "Ellen," the reporter began, "you've been through something unimaginable. How does it feel to know your story has not only changed your life, but is influencing the laws of the land?" I took a deep breath, my hands folded neatly in my lap. "It feels surreal," I said softly, "but it's not about me anymore. It's about the generations that follow, the ones who will face this same challenge, this same invasion of their privacy, their identity. We have to protect them, protect their truth, their voices." I paused, the weight of my words settling in the air. Maybe technology didn't steal my face. It revealed who I really was. The reporter nodded, scribbling notes as the cameras continued to roll. There was no applause, no cheers, but there was something better. The quiet. Understanding that I had done what I could to ensure the truth would not be buried again. It was around this time that the Ward Act was introduced by a senator who had been following my case. The bill called for the protection of digital identities, a law that would make it illegal to harvest, use, or sell someone's likeness without their consent. It was a victory, but it wasn't just mine. It was a victory for anyone whose face had been cloned, whose voice had been copied. I watched the news conference where the senator proudly announced the bill, my heart swelling with pride. Clara Benson, the senator said, may have been the first to expose this fraud, but her fight will save generations to come. We owe it to the future to ensure that their identities are protected in a world that is rapidly changing. And with that, the story that had once threatened to tear me apart became something larger, something that would shape the future for those who came after me. As I sat back in my chair, the sun beginning to set outside, I reflected on the journey. It had been long, it had been painful, but it had also been a journey of rebirth, of reclaiming my identity, my strength, and my purpose. Thomas walked into the room holding a small box. He set it down in front of me. I've been saving this, he said, his voice soft. I know it's not much, but I think you've earned it. I opened the box slowly, revealing the small, delicate gold locket inside. It had once been my mother's, and now it was mine. It's beautiful, I whispered. Thomas smiled, his eyes glistening. You're beautiful, Mom. And I think it's time I told you that. I nodded, my heart full of quiet gratitude. We may have been broken, but we were no longer lost. We had found each other again. In a world that had tried to erase us, we had found the truth, and in that truth, we had found ourselves. The storm raged outside. The heavy rain beat against the windows, the wind howling in the night as thunder cracked through the sky like a distant warning. But inside, the world was quiet. The soft, steady glow of a single lamp illuminated the room, casting gentle shadows on the walls. Ellen sat at her desk, her fingers lightly tapping on the keyboard, eyes fixed on the glowing screen in front of her. It was the same old computer she had kept for years, the one Emily had mocked, the one that had become her ally in the final hours of her battle. The progress bar flickered on the screen. The last file, the Scenic Route archive, was almost finished. It was her final act, a carefully preserved collection of evidence, the files that exposed not just Ryan and Lila's manipulation, but the entire Visage Dynamics network. She had uploaded everything, every photo, every conversation, every piece of evidence that could never be erased again. The upload bar filled steadily, slowly crawling toward completion. The clock ticked softly in the background, the sound a faint reminder of the passage of time. For a moment, Ellen's gaze shifted to the window. The storm outside seemed to be alive, the thunder rolling like a living thing, but her face remained calm, serene, as the light from the screen caught the faint reflection of her figure in the glass. Sometimes, truth isn't loud. It just waits, Ellen whispered to herself. The words hung in the air, soft but profound. She had lived through the storm, and now, as the final bar hit 100%, she felt a quiet peace wash over her. She leaned back in her chair, her hands resting in her lap. The world outside was dark, but inside, she was finally illuminated by the truth. It had taken time, but it had arrived, unwavering, unyielding. With one last glance at the screen, she closed her eyes and whispered softly, almost to herself. They cloned my face, but not my soul. The upload was complete. The truth was preserved. Outside, the thunder cracked one last time, its echo ringing through the air as if to punctuate the end of the storm. The window reflected Ellen's face, calm, strong, serene, her expression a quiet testament to everything she had fought for, everything she had reclaimed. As Ellen's story comes to a close, we are reminded that truth is not always loud, nor is it always easy to find. Sometimes it's quiet, hidden in the corners of our lives, waiting patiently until we finally have the courage to listen. And when we do, it has the power to change everything. If you found something in Ellen's journey that resonated with you, something that stirred the truth within you, then remember this: your story matters too. You are never alone in the fight for what's right, for what's true, and for what's just. If you enjoyed this story and want more journeys filled with strength, wisdom, and the power of the human spirit, subscribe to Her Side of the Story, because here, we believe every story deserves to be heard, every voice deserves to be recognized, and every truth deserves to shine. Remember, wisdom doesn't fade with age. It just learns to speak softly. And let time do the shouting. Click subscribe now, and don't miss out on the stories that remind us of the strength we all carry within us.